You've probably felt it before, that uncomfortable sensation when he asks you questions that somehow feel wrong, even though you can't pinpoint exactly why. Picture this scenario. You're at dinner discussing your future together when suddenly he interrupts with, "By the way, how was your day today?" The conversation dies instantly, the topic shifts, and you're left with a strange emptiness, as if someone just turned off the lights. According to Sigmund Freud, these seemingly innocent questions act as windows into the unconscious mind, revealing more about his true intentions than any direct statement ever could. The male unconscious develops sophisticated defense mechanisms to avoid genuine intimacy without him even realizing what he's doing. These aren't random questions, they're psychological shields. Over the next few minutes, you'll discover how to identify 5 specific question patterns that men unconsciously use when they're emotionally unavailable. You'll understand why your gut instinct warns you and learn to see through these psychological patterns. Freud taught us that the unconscious speaks its own language, and questions are among the most powerful vocabulary in that language. If you want to continue exploring the secrets of human behavior and learn to distinguish authentic communication from manipulative tactics, subscribe to this channel now. The first warning sign begins with a question you've probably heard countless times before. The initial red flag appears in seemingly harmless questions that always emerge when conversations become too deep. "By the way, have you eaten yet?" Or, "Oh, what time is it anyway?" Questions that feel completely inappropriate for the moment. Imagine this. You're discussing your relationship, your desires, fears, or hopes. The conversation becomes intimate, vulnerable, real. And precisely at that moment, he interrupts you with, "By the way, wasn't that your car outside? Or did you see that movie everyone's talking about?" What happens here? Your conversation dies, the emotional connection snaps, and you feel like you've been speaking to an invisible wall. The insidious part is that he hasn't done anything obviously wrong. He simply asked a question. Freud would identify this behavior as a classic defense mechanism. Repression through distraction. The male unconscious registers the danger of emotional closeness and immediately activates a protective reflex, not consciously or planned, but automatically, like a psychological airbag that deploys when intimacy threatens. Why does this happen? Because genuine emotional closeness threatens the ego, requiring vulnerability, admitting uncertainties, and exposing personal weaknesses, which contradicts the masculine ideal of control and strength deeply rooted in the unconscious. The distraction question serves multiple unconscious functions simultaneously. It stops the dangerous conversation without making him appear as someone who refuses to engage, shifts attention to a harmless, controllable topic, and gives him time to rebuild his psychological wall. Notice the timing of these questions. They never come randomly, but always when you open up, become vulnerable, or show genuine emotions. This isn't coincidence. It's the unconscious sounding the alarm. Particularly insidious are distraction questions that sound caring or interested. "Have you had enough to drink?" Or, "Aren't you cold?" Sound loving, but they serve a different purpose. Emotional escape. Freud called such mechanisms reaction formation, showing the opposite of the true feeling to hide it. Another telltale sign is repetition. Men who aren't ready for intimacy ask these distraction questions repeatedly, interrupting every deep conversation and blocking every emotional approach, creating a pattern of superficiality. The tragic aspect is that he doesn't notice it himself. His conscious mind interprets these questions as signs of attention and care, while his unconscious knows exactly what it's doing, protecting him from the fear of true connection. For you, this means when you notice important conversations being regularly interrupted by such questions, his unconscious is communicating a clear message: don't come too close. His psyche isn't ready for the depth that a serious relationship requires. Have you ever noticed how an important conversation was destroyed by a completely inappropriate question? However, there's an even more revealing signal. questions about time that expose his true priorities. The second signal hides in how he talks about time. Let's see when I have time, or maybe next week, but could be later too. Questions and statements that keep you in a state of permanent uncertainty. Imagine wanting to plan a weekend together, discuss an important appointment, or simply know when you'll see him again. His response, "When works for you?" followed by, "I'll see what I'm doing," or "Are you asking me this again?" These questions share one thing. They never give you a clear, committed answer. What's happening psychologically here? Freud would say, time is power, and whoever controls time controls the relationship. Vague time questions are an unconscious power struggle, a way to maintain dominance without appearing openly dominant. The male unconscious instinctively recognizes that concrete time commitments mean accountability. Accountability means responsibility. Responsibility means emotional attachment, and emotional attachment means loss of autonomy. The greatest fear of the immature masculine ego, particularly revealing, are questions like, "Why is that so important?" when you ask for specific dates. This counter-question projects his own attachment anxiety onto you, making you the demanding one, the impatient one, the difficult one, a classic projection mechanism according to Freud. Time questions reveal something deeper, his priorities. A man who's serious makes time, plans, organizes, and creates space for you in his life. A man who evades treats you as an option, not a priority. His unconscious knows this and communicates it through these endless, vague time questions. Pay attention to the tone. "When do you want to do that?" sounds different from "when would work for you." The first implies your desires are a burden, while the second shows genuine interest in shared time. The unconscious doesn't choose words randomly. Another warning sign is endless postponement. "Can we move this to next week?" becomes a pattern, with each week bringing new excuses and vague time references. Freud would interpret this as repetition compulsion, a neurotic pattern serving anxiety avoidance. The insidious thing about time questions is they appear rational and organizational. Nobody can blame him for asking about practical details, but his psyche uses this apparent rationality to create emotional distance. Particularly telling is when he has clear schedules for other areas of his life, work, hobbies, friends, but only vague hints for you, showing where you stand on his unconscious priority list. The healthiest masculine psyche communicates time as a gift. "I'm looking forward to Saturday with you," instead of "let's see if Saturday works." The difference lies not in circumstances, but in the inner attitude toward the relationship. When you notice you constantly have to fight for his time, that every plan becomes a negotiation process, his unconscious is communicating a clear message. You're not his first choice, but his backup plan in case nothing better comes along. Have you ever felt like you had to beg for his time, even though he claimed you were important to him? But there's an even more subtle type of question that reveals his true self-image, comparisons that expose his deepest insecurities. The third signal hides in questions that bring other men into play. Was he better than me? Or do you find him more attractive? Or seemingly harmless? What's your ex-colleague up to? These questions sound like interest, but are psychological traps. Imagine telling a harmless story about a colleague, friend, or even a random encounter, and immediately comes the question, "And what do you think of him?" Or, "Did he try to message you too?" Suddenly you feel like you need to defend yourself even though you've done nothing wrong. What's happening here? Freud would interpret these comparison questions as expressions of a deep-rooted inferiority complex. The masculine ego, uncertain of itself, constantly seeks validation through comparisons while projecting its own insecurities onto you. These questions serve a dual unconscious function, gathering information to evaluate his position. Am I good enough? Am I the best? Is there competition? While creating a climate of mistrust where you must constantly justify yourself. The insidious part is you become the perpetrator while being the victim. His jealousy becomes your problem, His insecurity becomes your task to reassure him, a classic case of psychological manipulation through projection. Freud taught us that narcissistic personalities can only define themselves through comparisons, lacking a stable self-image and needing constant confirmation they're the best. Comparison questions express this narcissistic wound. Notice the subtlety. Is he married? Sounds like normal curiosity, but tone, context, and timing reveal the true intention. These questions always come when you speak naturally and openly about other people, reminding you that you belong to him and he monitors all your social interactions. Particularly dangerous are comparison questions about your past. Was he better in bed, or did he give you such gifts too? These questions destroy the present through obsessive preoccupation with the past, which Freud would interpret as expression of immature, possessive sexuality. An emotionally secure man doesn't ask comparison questions because he trusts you and himself, knowing he's unique not because he's the best, but because he's authentically himself. An insecure man lives in permanent competition with phantoms. The healthiest masculine psyche celebrates your social contacts, encouraging friendships and supporting relationships with colleagues and family. An immature masculine psyche sees every man as a potential threat. Comparison questions also reveal his view of you, not as an independent person, but as an object to be possessed, a trophy that could be taken away, contradicting any healthy love relationship based on trust and respect. When you notice you constantly have to explain away other men, that every harmless mention becomes an interrogation, his unconscious communicates a clear message. He sees you not as a partner, but as property. The tragic irony is, the more he questions, the more he pushes you away. His jealousy becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, creating exactly the distance he seeks to avoid. Have you ever felt you had to justify completely normal human contacts? Even more revealing are questions he asks about your feelings, seemingly empathetic on the surface but emotionally manipulative. The fourth signal appears in his questions about your emotions, questions that seem compassionate but prevent real intimacy. How do you feel? Or, are you angry? Or, why are you being so emotional? Questions that put you on the defensive instead of creating closeness. Imagine being hurt, disappointed, or frustrated about something he did or didn't do. Instead of addressing your feelings, he asks, "Why are you making such a drama out of this?" Or, "Is this really that important to you?" Suddenly, it's not about the problem, but about your reaction to the problem. What's happening psychologically? Freud would call this strategy intellectualization, a defense mechanism where emotions are converted into rational categories to reduce their threatening nature. He treats your feelings like a scientific phenomenon to be analyzed rather than accepting them as human reality. These feeling questions serve an insidious function. They make you responsible for the emotional atmosphere. If you're sad, it's due to your oversensitivity. If you're angry, it's your lack of self-control. If you feel neglected, it's your unrealistic expectations. Classic gaslighting disguised as empathy. Particularly manipulative is, do you feel better when you react like this? This question implies your feelings are a conscious choice, a form of self-punishment you could control if you wanted to, which Freud would interpret as projection of his own emotional immaturity. Notice the difference between genuine and fake interest. An emotionally available man asks, "That must have been difficult for you. How can I help?" An emotionally absent man asks, "Why do you let this upset you so much?" The first opens space for your feelings. The second makes them the problem. The most dangerous variation is, "Do you still love me?" This question always comes when you express criticism or dissatisfaction, designed to emotionally blackmail you. Either stop criticizing or risk appearing unloving, a manipulative move that covers your legitimate feelings with guilt. Freud taught us that emotional maturity means handling ambivalence, the fact that you can love someone while being frustrated with their behavior. Immature men cannot tolerate this complexity. For them, feelings are either good or bad, right or wrong. Another warning sign is temporal manipulation with feeling questions. Why are you still thinking about that? Or, can't you just forget it? These questions attempt to control your emotional process, wanting you to process feelings according to his timeline, not your own. The insidious thing about these questions is they sound caring. Are you okay? Can be a loving question or a subtle request to hide your true feelings to avoid being a burden. Context and reaction to your answer reveal the true intention. An emotionally healthy man asks questions that create space. What do you need right now? Or how can I support you? An immature man asks questions that take space. Does this really have to be? Or aren't you exaggerating? When you notice you constantly have to justify your feelings, that every emotional reaction becomes an interrogation, his unconscious communicates a clear message. Your emotions are a disturbance to his inner peace, not an important part of your personality. Have you ever felt you had to apologize for your feelings, even though they were completely justified? But the most subtle signal hides in his questions about the future, questions that promise hope but reveal attachment anxiety. The fifth and most subtle signal conceals itself in his questions about your shared future. What would you say if we moved in together someday? Or how do you imagine it when we get married one day? Questions that sound like promises but are pure hypotheses. Imagine after months or even years of relationship, he asks, "What do you think it would be like if we had children?" You're excited, thinking he's finally talking about future plans. But then nothing happens. These conversations never lead to concrete steps, remaining trapped in the thin air of possibilities. What's happening psychologically? Freud would interpret these hypothetical future questions as a sophisticated defense mechanism, a kind of as-if intimacy. His unconscious gives you the feeling of closeness and connection without actually committing. It's emotional satisfaction without emotional risk. These questions serve a double function. They keep you in the relationship by nourishing hope while protecting him from real commitment because they're only theoretical. What if isn't I want or we will. It's the language of attachment anxiety disguised as romantic vision. The insidious part is you interpret these questions as signs of his seriousness. Your heart hears he's thinking about our future, while his unconscious thinks, I'm talking about the future without committing. A psychological deception that serves both sides, but only satisfies one. Notice the subjunctive mood. Could you imagine? What if? These formulations keep everything in the realm of possibility, never in the realm of planning. Freud would interpret this as escape from the reality of adulthood, from decisions, responsibility, and real consequences. Particularly revealing is how these future questions repeat themselves, always the same hypothetical conversations, but never progress toward reality. Imagine we had a house remains a thought experiment. A house viewing is never arranged. This isn't coincidence, it's systematic. Another warning sign is the reaction to concrete follow-up questions. When you try to turn what if into when exactly, he evades with let's see first or we still have time. Suddenly, the romantic vision has become a pressuring demand. Freud taught us that the psyche develops complex strategies to satisfy desires without activating anxiety. Hypothetical future questions satisfy his need for romantic connection without activating his fear of attachment, a perfect psychological compromise for him. The tragedy for you is these questions nourish hopes that were never meant to be fulfilled. They're not the beginning of planning, but a substitute for planning, not expressions of his love, but expressions of his inability to love. An emotionally healthy man speaks about the future in concrete terms. I want to move in with you. Let's figure out how we can make that happen. An attachment-anxious man speaks in subjunctives. How would you like it if we lived together? The healthiest masculine psyche turns dreams into plans, converting visions into concrete steps. An immature masculine psyche keeps dreams as dreams, safe, non-committal and consequence-free. When you notice your relationship is rich in beautiful future visions, but poor in concrete steps, his unconscious communicates a clear message. He enjoys the idea of a future with you, but doesn't want to live it. Have you ever noticed that wonderful future conversations never become actual plans? But there's one final, particularly sophisticated type of question that surpasses all others. Questions that use your own words against you. The sixth signal shows itself in his master discipline, the deflection question. What do you mean by that? Or, why are you asking me this? Questions that answer your questions with counter-questions. Imagine asking, where do you see us in a year? His response, why is that so important to you? Suddenly, you have to explain why your normal question is justified. What's happening here? Freud would recognize this strategy as the ultimate defense mechanism, responsibility reversal. Instead of answering, he makes you the one who must answer. The deflection question serves multiple unconscious functions. It completely avoids the original question, questions your right to ask, and reverses power dynamics. You go from questioner to questioned. The insidious part is, he only asked a question, but this question is a weapon that destroys any honest answer by questioning the foundation of your question. Particularly manipulative is, why are you asking me this again? This deflection question implies you should stop asking, making your natural need for answers into a control addiction. Notice the pattern. Every important question gets answered with a counter-question. Do you love me? Becomes, why do you doubt it? What do you think about our future? Becomes, why are you pressuring me? These deflection questions reveal his deepest fear, the fear of emotional vulnerability. Every direct answer would force him to show himself, to become attackable. The tragedy for you is you lose yourself in justification loops, explaining why your question is justified instead of getting an answer, becoming a lawyer for your own needs. Another telltale sign is emotional exhaustion after such conversations. You feel confused and frustrated even though you only asked a simple question. This is the desired effect. The healthiest masculine psyche says, that's an important question. Let me answer honestly. An immature psyche says, why are you asking me such questions? When every important conversation becomes an interrogation about your motives, his unconscious communicates the clearest message. He's not ready for an adult, equal relationship. Have you ever felt you had to apologize for asking normal questions? These 6 question types are the language of the emotionally unavailable man, the language of his unconscious that prevents closeness where it could develop. Freud taught us the unconscious never lies. These questions are the most honest communication you'll receive from him, revealing his true feelings clearer than any promise or romantic gesture. A man who's serious asks different questions. He asks, how can I support you? Instead of, why are you reacting like this? He asks, when will we see each other again? Instead of, let's see when I have time. Your intuition hasn't deceived you. When his questions feel wrong, it's because they are wrong. You're perceptive. You recognize the language of the unconscious. Which of these 6 questions have you experienced? Comment below and tell us which country you're watching from. If this video helped you, like and subscribe to our channel and share it with someone who needs to recognize these signals.